Thing is though, what's up, y'all? So I've been thinking about this, and I really have a problem with Gen X. And Gen X are like the people that are like younger than the Boomers but older than the Millennials. Um, Gen X are the people that are like mid 40s to 60 years old. And nobody really talks about Gen X, but Boomers get a lot of the flack. But Gen X also are kind of bad because a lot of them are just like Boomers 2.0. I have Gen X parents, and you would think they were Boomers by the mindsets they have, and I noticed that a lot of things. I noticed that with Gen X is that they really pride themselves on following Boomer mindset and upholding Boomer mindset. Um, and it's just like nobody talks about Gen X, but Gen X really, is at fault for a lot of things in the economy and society, and they just kind of skate by. Like boomers get all the heat, but like Gen X, you were the ones after the boomers, and you're the main ones, that were upholding these values that allow boomers to, you know, do what boomers did. And I know a lot of Gen X had Gen Z children, but Gen Z definitely or certainly doesn't really hold the same ideals as their Gen X parents. Because Gen Z wants to change things, and a lot of Gen X people were upholding boomer values and traditions that were not for the benefit as we see today for younger generations like millennials, Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha. And Gen X just kind of let it go by. And I would say millennials were the first generation to really start rebelling against, societal norms. Whereas Gen X just kind of just let things happen. Obviously, every Gen X person isn't the same. They're not, a monolith. So you can't say that every Gen X person is the same, but a lot of them have upheld boomer ideas, and it was the millennials that started fighting back against all that, and the millennials were the ones that got a lot of heat from the boomers. But Gen X just kind of let things happen, and it's really interesting how they just get by, and people don't really hold Gen X accountable for letting boomers get away with what they did.
Everything. They can't get away with it. They can't.
And a lot of Gen X, they talk about, things were different back then. You wouldn't understand because, things were different back then. We just had to do what we had to do to survive. And it's just like, you know, that's cowardice. For a generation that upholds themselves on hard work and, values and all that, it's cowardice to, not fight against something that, is not for your best interests. Gen Z is probably the brokest generation, not of our own fault, but you see Gen Z rebelling against these things that were put in place every day, and you don't see Gen Z complaining about it. I mean, we're complaining about it, but we're also rebelling against it. But Gen X, are upholding boomer things and then shaming millennials and Gen Z for having the courage to go against it. Um, like I said, all Gen X don't aren't like this, but a lot of them are like this. And when you call them out on their hypocrisy, they shame you. That makes you no different, and that makes you no different than your boomer counterparts. And no one likes boomers. And then Gen X just skates by. It's like, Gen X is also at fault for a lot of things in the economy, a lot of social issues. And it's just crazy to me how everyone just conveniently ignores them and goes for the boomers. But when the boomers finally leave the earth, we're going to have to deal with the Gen X, and they're not that much better. Um, and no one really holds them accountable, and we need to hold them accountable. And I think it is important to hold them accountable because you cut off the head of one snake, but then there's another head at the bottom, and that's a metaphor for saying just because you got rid of one, or one evil finally leaves, we still have another evil that needs to be addressed, and that's the Gen X that allowed things to go as they were, that ended up not benefiting millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Alpha as they grow up, as they're currently growing up.
It never ends.
I mean, Gen X still has time to right their wrongs, so I wouldn't write them all off as terrible, but a lot of them definitely are, hypocritical with their stances, and they definitely do shame millennials and Gen Z. Um, Meanwhile, they let boomers just do anything, and I think a lot of Gen X definitely need to ask themselves, was this the right thing to do, and did this end up really benefiting me in the long run? Because it really hasn't. Because boomers still are, I think, the wealthiest generation currently, which is crazy. And yeah, I really feel like a lot of Gen X people need to, you know, address those issues, and I think finally they will be able to, be happy when they address those issues and ask themselves why, they just let things happen and didn't fight against these, ideas and traditions that were not for the benefit of newer generations. Um, because millennials were really the first ones to do that, and they got a lot of flack for it. So Gen X people, y'all need to get it together, because while the boomers are still here and they're getting the hate and the fire, we're not gonna let y'all skate by any longer.
Not anymore.
If you like my commentary, make sure to like and subscribe. We talk about a lot of things over here, ranging from things like Gen Z culture to social issues, economic issues, and I can guarantee that my commentary will always keep you entertained.